Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Britain Zimbabwe Society Young Researcher Prize event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pauline Dodgson-Castillo. I'm a former chair of BZS and the co-founder of this prize with Dr. Knox Chitio. We're here today, the official award of the prize, and to give this year's winner, Epiphania Munetsi, the opportunity to tell us about her research and her other work. But first, I'd like to tell you a little about the history and rationale of the prize. BZS has held an annual research day together with the Oxford African Studies Centre since the 1980s. At our research days, we've always had a range of presenters, from young researchers to senior academics. The success of these events gave us the idea of setting up two awards: a Lifetime Achievement Award and the Young Researcher Prize. And we were delighted when the Oxford African Studies Centre said they would like to collaborate on this new initiative. The Young Researcher Prize was established in 2018 and the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2021. The aim of the Young Researcher Prize is to promote the endeavour and excellence of young and new researchers working in the field of Zimbabwean studies. We rely very much on our panel of nominators to find us outstanding candidates, and I would like to thank this year's panel for the work they've undertaken on our behalf. There are two differences to the process of selecting and celebrating the prize this year. The first difference is that previously, the candidates for the prize could be based anywhere in the world. This year, we specified that the candidate should be Zimbabwe-based. There were good reasons for this. The years of the pandemic have been difficult for everyone engaged in research, but it has been an especially difficult time for researchers in Zimbabwe in terms of funding, resources, and competing pressures on their time. We also realise that it isn't easy for Zimbabwean scholars to get the international recognition they deserve. The second difference is this is the first time that we're holding a separate event. Previously, the prize has been awarded at a short ceremony at our annual research day, but now we have this event with the prize winner and guest speakers. Now it's my pleasure to invite Professor Miles Tendy, a very old friend of ours. He's from the Oxford African Studies Centre, and Miles is going to say a few words about our partnership and also tell us about the ways in which the centre supports research on Africa. Miles.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming along to honor our young researcher receiving this prize, Munetsi. Well done to you, and let me take this opportunity also to convey my own condolences, personal condolences, for the passing of your family member. On to the business of the day. Well, as we all heard moments ago, there's been a relationship between BZS and the African Studies Centre for a very long time now, approximately 3 decades, I would say. And we continue to cherish that partnership. And a good marker of that evaluation of the partnership, so to speak, is the fact that across all these 3 decades, there's consistently been a good amount of research about Zimbabwe generated in the African Studies Centre itself. I don't know if it's by design, but kind of or accident, I don't know. But if you'll all remember Terence Ranger and the great amount of work that he did. And then, of course, Terry retired, but over the years, people such as me have also begun working in that center. So the center continues to generate research on Zimbabwe by staff, Terry in the past, myself, but also by way of students. There's an MSc in African Studies degree that the center runs. almost every year there's at least one or two Zimbabweans on the degree. I'm on sabbatical leave this year, so I'm a bit out of things, but I do remember reading the admissions files last year. So I am aware that 5 Zimbabweans last year were made offers. How many eventually came, I don't know, but one or two, I'm sure, are on there. So even on the student or the student cohort, pretty much every year we have students from Zimbabwe taking the MSc African Studies, and they generate thesis projects on Zimbabwe as well. Fascinating range of material or themes that they focus on. And just to hop on a bit more about this, I don't want to take up your time, but Simukai Chigudu, who many of you will know here, who has become perhaps the authority on public health issues in Zimbabwe, is a former student of the center itself. George Karekwaivanane, a brilliant historian up in Edinburgh, again came through the center. So it's staff one level, students who've come through and go on to be academics as well, working on Zimbabwe from Zimbabwe. So that's an important part of the relationship, so to speak. The other side obviously also concerns things such as logistics. Often the African Studies Center is attached to St. Anthony's College. So when we, for example, when we used to have a lot of the in-person meetings, bookings for the venue for BZS Day in St. Anthony's would be done by the center. And the center also contributes a little bit of money to BZS as well. And there's obviously the flagship, the relationship, being the BZS being able to be affiliated to the African Studies Center and the University of Oxford more broadly, has its own merits or prestige, if you will. So those are the kinds of links we have, and we continue to cherish a relationship. And in practice, as I said, is borne out continuous support for BZS every year, students from Zimbabwe who keep coming, and as well on the staff at the center itself, Zimbabweans who continue to be hired and continue to work on various themes about the country. So that's about it that I can say, I guess. I just want to again congratulate our winner. Well done again, and as they say, it's cliche, but the sky is the limit. Keep soaring, keep soaring. Well done again, and thank you for listening.
I just add that Simukai Chigudu was the first winner of the Young Researcher Award.
That's absolutely right. I should have mentioned that.
From strength to strength.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Great. Okay. If I may, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Pauline, for your welcome and introduction and explanation of what the prize is about and a bit of its history. And also to Miles, thank you so much. As ever, we really appreciate the partnership with yourselves at the ASC and also Professor Miles Launer. And I should just add perhaps that Miles is very, very generous with his time. As he said, he's actually on leave at the moment, but you've made the time to be here. We really appreciate it. And also thank you for your research day. You also do the welcome and intros. You've been doing it for a number of years, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you so much, Miles. Okay, it is my honor now to introduce our featured speakers. So I'll introduce them in the order in which they will speak. So I'll start with our Young Researcher Prize winner, our 2023 prize winner, who is Epiphania Munetsi. So just in terms of a little bit of her bio, and thanks, Miles, we absolutely do applaud Epiphania and what she's achieved. But just by way of background, so Epiphania is a registered psychologist whose career is based on scientific research. Her passion is mental health, and she's an alumni of Great Zimbabwe University. As some of you may have seen, one of her mentors is here with us, Professor Herbert Zirima. Is also online with us, and we're very grateful to you, Prof. Epiphania holds a BSc honors in psychology, and she has a Master of Philosophy as well. And she's a final year DPhil student in psychology. Epiphania has taught and mentored students at Great Zimbabwe University. She is also currently managing the Succeed transnational mental health and psychology project. This is a major initiative across various African countries, and she's managing the Zimbabwe hub of that with the university partnership, I believe, with the University of Zimbabwe. Epiphania has published and co-published widely in various refereed journals. And when we were discussing the various candidates for this prize, we noted her peers have said that she's brought some innovations in terms of methodology in quantitative and qualitative data. And this is one of the things that really struck my eye, and something which kind of stood out for us as well. And so she has contributed towards the research in her field. She is also Zimbabwe's first registered female psychologist. Again, I think, you know, we really applaud that. That's quite historic. So that is quite a breakthrough. So Epiphania is our winner, and she will be speaking shortly and telling her story. But I would also just like to introduce our two speakers who will follow on after Epiphania. And they are Professor Farai Madzimbamutho, whom I think most of us know. Farai is head of department of the Faculty of Medicine and in anesthesia and critical care medicine, and is also the chair of the department of, or was the chair of health professions in Zimbabwe. Farai has a distinguished CV in terms of the medical profession in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, I should say really internationally. Farai is internationally known for his contributions to medicine. So we're very, very honored that he is able to join us today. I would also like to introduce his wife, Professor Sunanda Ray, who I think we also, most of us know. And Sunanda is also at the University of Botswana, the Department of Medical Education. Sunanda is a fellow of the Faculty of Public Health here in the UK. She developed the family medicine program at the University of Zimbabwe and the College of Health Sciences. So we are really, really honored to have both Farai and Sunanda with us today. They are world-class medical practitioners and have contributed so much to Zimbabwe, to Botswana, and globally in their field. So we're really, really honored to have you with us to also give a presentation after Epiphania has spoken. But for now, I think without further ado, I would like to hand us over to Epiphania. Epiphania, I would now invite you to take the floor and tell us something about your research, something about your journey, really, your career, your life, your journey, and the floor really is yours. We welcome you with open arms. We congratulate you as well, and the floor is yours. So I invite Epiphania to speak. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Knox. I'm also delighted to notice that our Succeed research manager, Rachel, has joined. There's also Dr. Ritsito Kakuma. She is our capacity building manager in Succeed. So I'm thrilled that the two have managed to join. I'm also with Pilani here, one of the Succeed team members in Zimbabwe. She's also with me here. I'm wondering if you can see me. We've tried my camera and it looks like it's not showing up. Can you see me? There's nothing.
We're not, but
Sorry.
that's okay. But we can hear you very well.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll use my voice instead of my face.
Okay. Hopefully we'll be able to see, but if not, that's okay. As long as
That's all right. I was born and raised in the rural parts of Zimbabwe, Domboshava, the area, and this area lies in Mashonaland East Province. I was born as a Christian, and I was raised by two teachers. Both my parents were teachers, and they were very strict as they were nurturing us as children. We used to like moving around, and in Domboshava there are quite a lot of mountains and wild fruits. So we would go in the fields, in the forests, looking for wild fruits, and I used to enjoy that. I also used it to enjoy mountain climbing, and one of my weakest area was I would want to slide on rocky mountains. So I would come back home with my clothes torn, and my mom was not very kind to me because of that behavior. But anyway, that is expected when children are growing. Something interesting was that I used to pick fruits in the forests, popularly known as majanje. So I would bring some for my mom, and she was so happy. I would also pluck wild flowers for her, and she liked them so much. You know, I enjoyed my mom's hugs because of the wildflowers. But now, one thing that was, fascinating when I was growing up was I was very inquisitive. I wanted to know a lot of things which were surrounding me. So that's the reason why I would spend time, climbing mountains, trying to discover things and all. So because of that, they used to nickname me Muchaneta in Shona, which means in English, you will soon get tired of this child because she's very naughty, she's very inquisitive, she wants to know a lot of things. So as a curious child, I was quite adventurous. And I remember very well that there were days when people surrounding me didn't like the way I used to ask them questions, because the questions were quite challenging, and some were quite demanding from a child. So people didn't like it. But because of that, I didn't know that one day I was going to be a research psychologist because of being so inquisitive. Now, I attended a high school where my parents were teaching. It was a boarding high school, but I was a day scholar because my parents were staying within the school campus. So during my secondary education, I was 12. I developed a migraine headache, and it was kind of illness because no one knew what it was. And after a lot of tests, that's when it was discovered that I was suffering from migraine headaches. I discovered that the headaches would die down after several counseling sessions. Hence, I wanted to understand the relationship between the migraine headaches and the counseling sessions. By then, I was about 16 years old. So I finished my high school, and it was not an easy journey because of the kind of illnesses. I would get 3 attacks per week. And during my final examinations, maybe because of our working overnight, I would even get more attacks, and it was quite difficult. But I did not give up because of my parents. They were actually there to support me. So because of the support that I was getting from my parents and my relatives, I soldiered on. The reason why I chose mental health was because of this kind of illness. And because the kind of illness would simply, drop down after several sessions. My uncle, who happens to be a Catholic priest, actually advised me to carry out a course in counseling. I didn't know the value of the course at first because I didn't want anything that was challenging, but he forced me. So after carrying out the course, I really realized how important it was. And I felt I was going to help people who had mental health challenges, especially those who were suffering from depression. And by doing that, when I had just started when I just finished my counseling, I realized that my aunt suffered from another ailment, which was depression related. Before I even gave her an intervention, she passed on. I was so hurt. And I really thought there was need for me to do something about the kind of mental health situation, especially in Zimbabwe, because it was not anywhere far away from us. It was just close by, and family members were also suffering from it. I then had a passion, like I said, in mental health. But one thing that was actually a breakthrough in my life is when I met Professor Dixon Chibanda for the first time. He realized the potential in me, and he was actually charismatic and very knowledgeable about mental health. He was also very experienced, and because of that, my closeness to him helped me to really get a broader spectrum when it came to mental health. So he actually appointed me as his coordinators, but he nicknamed me research psychologist. I didn't know what it meant, so I had to do a lot of Googling to understand what research psychology was all about. And interestingly, he even went on to make a tag. The tag was written Epiphania Munetsi, research psychologist, well before I was even registered. So I really wanted to work and understand what it was. So because of that, we moved on with Prof. Dixon Chibanda. Now he's the lead research manager for the Friendship Bench project in Zimbabwe. We worked hard together and would spend sleepless nights trying to put things in place. You know, in Zimbabwe, you cannot just carry out a research before ethical approvals. So we would work closely with local ethical approvals, local ethical boards in order to get approvals. And that was not an easy journey. I remember the other time we had to dismiss at 3 a.m. You know, we just had to take 2 hours, and then we were back at around 6 in order to make sure that we welcome the staff from the research board, which were coming for inspection. And I remember very well, after the inspection, you know, we had to take them to the sites, to the field, in order for them to make sure that all the data was captured well. After that, they had to ring Professor Dixon, and they invited him together with us to the medical board in Zimbabwe. And we were told that we're done well, and we're actually leading other research components. That was a plus on my part. And on my work experience, I've contributed, like Dr. Knox has said, I've contributed to mental health in Zimbabwe. And as he said, I'm the first registered research psychologist, a woman research psychologist. We were the two of us, one male and one female, as first research psychologists on that day. And I should actually give credit to Professor Zurima here with us, because he was one of my mentors. He was actually my supervisor for research psychology internship. And he was really proud of me, and he continuously encouraged me until I achieved. So with the Friendship Bench, we took up a randomized controlled trial, which was quite interesting because we wanted to understand the efficacy of a randomized controlled trial. We wanted to understand how lay health workers would actually help people to come out of depression. So it was a brief psychological intervention for common mental disorders delivered by lay health workers. And we were supervising and helping these lay health workers as a lead researcher. So after the trial, it was a randomized controlled trial. We found out that Friendship Bench was very vital. And if lay health workers are given basic training in problem-solving therapy, they can actually help in reducing common mental disorders in Zimbabwe. Then a cohort study followed, where I wanted to understand whether these lay health workers would actually reduce suicidal ideation among people. It was quite interesting. I led that component, and it was quite interesting to note that if these lay health workers, men and women, are supervised and assisted, they can actually reduce suicide ideation among Zimbabwean populace. So far, like Dr. Knox said, I've co-authored 10 publications. I've co-authored some with Rachel with Reese and with Professor Zirima. They're also taking part in this journey. So we then started the Succeed project in 2020. And I'm working there as a programs manager, like was highlighted. And Succeed stands for Support Comprehensive Care and Empowerment for People with Psychosocial Disabilities in Africa. And this program is running in 4 African countries, and I'm managing the Zimbabwe component. It is quite interesting because in Succeed, we're talking about co-production. Again, it's a research project where we are saying, if we co-produce whatever we are doing with people who are experts by experience and those who are experts by profession, we can come up with one thing and actually help people to access services and also be helped, especially those who are suffering from psychosis. So it is quite interesting that I have quite a lot of experience, because with that research component, we continuously get guidance in Succeed. And again, the capacity building is helping us and equipping us with the latest ways of carrying out researches. And like Dr. Knox has said, we are getting information, we are getting knowledge on qualitative and quantitative data. And interestingly, as we speak, we are working on Atlas TI as a qualitative data analysis tool, which is fairly new in Zimbabwe, but we are with the help of the London School team, which is here with us, we are doing well. And then on after my registration as a research psychologist, I mean, before, in fact, it wasn't an easy journey. I'm sure Professor Zirima agrees with me. And as a first research psychologist, I needed to break the ground. So at first I didn't make it. Why? Because I felt I had to complain to Allied Health, because I felt I was shortchanged, because people who supervised, people who actually who sat on the panel were community psychologists, and the other one was a clinical psychologist who didn't have the research component. So after complaining, I had 4 people on the board, and I successfully finished the internship. So now I'm going to talk about the identity consultancy, which is now led by Professor Dr. Zirima. He, like I said, was my mentor, and he has passion in mental health. I am under the research component, where we continuously guide students, especially in ethics and research. That's where my strength is. And as a consultant, it is helping me to put into practice the knowledge that I have gained as a research psychologist. It's also helping me to put into practice the knowledge that I'm gaining from our Succeed. And my duty as a research psychologist is to discover unknowns and answer questions about how the brain functions and how biological factors affect the way people act, the way people think, and the way people feel. As a research psychologist, I can also now develop and conduct quantitative and qualitative researches and mixed methods as well. This is all now being, helped. I'm getting help from identity consultancy. And I'm also operating within an institution, which is the University of Zimbabwe, under the Faculty of Medicine, where Succeed is affiliated, and again under Great Zimbabwe University, where I teach, where I lecture ethics. Our responsibilities as a research psychologist now to formulate appropriate research questions and hypotheses pertaining to the phenomena of interest. In this case, my interest is in mental health. And we are also scheduling data collection and meetings with participants, which we are doing under Succeed. And we also are responsible for disseminating our findings in workshops, conferences, and in journals. We are also ensuring adherence to ethical guidelines governing the study of human participants, which is quite interesting. As a student who is doing the DPhil, my major focus is in men and mental health. In Zimbabwe, mental health in men is lagging behind, because we feel that men don't want to be researched on. Hence, men are undertreated. The diagnosis of mental health is untreated, and at times it's undiagnosed. So for that reason, I decided to venture into that area where we want to unearth myths concerning mental health in men in Zimbabwe. So I've already done my field work, and now I'm on the write-up stage. So in conclusion, more work needs to be done in Zimbabwe, especially in mental health. There is no funding in research. I can talk, I know, representing the consultancy, our identity consultancy. Such a branch has no funding. And whatever we are doing, we are using our own resources in order to reach out to people and help people. Now, mental health is neglected because of the stigma associated with it. For that reason, people don't venture into this field, but it is all because we have passion in mental health, and we're getting assistance from probably Succeed, which continuously helps us in capacity building in order to be well versed in new ways of doing things. We really aim to have a positive influence in Zimbabwe, especially on mental health. And as an individual, I want to change people's lives through the interventions. And my work should bear amazing fruits with your support. I really want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone who has taken time to be with us this afternoon, especially on this day where I've been recognized as a young researcher who has made an impact in Zimbabwe. I really thank you, and I really appreciate your presence. Thank you, Dr. Knox and team. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Epiphania. I really appreciate you sharing your story, the work that you do. It's so important on mental health. And also just note that in this age where sometimes, where there can be, sometimes people are sort of promoting almost a counterfactual narrative in some areas. It's so good to hear the work that you and others are doing in terms of evidence-based research and so on and so forth. Research matters, and people who are willing to go out there, do the research, collect the data, it really matters to national and global development. So thank you. So just please forgive me if for any reason in fact, I think I'll just stop my video for now. Just please bear with me, because I'm actually in Addis at the moment and the connection is a little bit insecure. But hopefully I'll be able to pull through. But for now, what I would like to do is to invite Professor Faraya Madzimabuto and Professor Sunanda Ray to make your presentation. The order in which you speak, I will leave up to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I hope, can everybody hear us? Because we're having a bit of trouble with our sound.
Yes.
Okay, we've swapped laptops, so hopefully it'll be okay. Can we share screen? It's saying we can't screen share while somebody else is participating.
Try and share your screen now.
Okay, can people see this?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we just have a short presentation for you. We were asked to share our experiences about doing research in resource-constrained circumstances. So this is mainly based on the work that we've been doing while we've been at the University of Zimbabwe, but also a bit about Botswana. And let me first start with introducing ourselves for those who maybe don't know us. So this is, so I'm a public health physician, and I now work in the Department of Medical Education at UB in an adjunct position. And Farai is an anesthetist with critical care and heads the Department of Anesthetics and Critical Care at the Faculty of Medicine at UB. But in our middle age, we both decided, we were trying when we were at the University of Zimbabwe to set up a master's in health professions education. And so we decided that we'd better do a qualification in that. So in 2018, we enrolled for an MPhil in HPE, which is health professions education at Stellenbosch University, which we completed and graduated in December 2019. So unfortunately, we had already, by the end of 2019, because of the economic situation in Zimbabwe, we'd had to leave. But we've continued to teach on the program that we set up when Farai was the head of the Department of HPE at the College of Health Sciences at UZ. Now that we all know how to use Zoom, we've been able to carry on teaching on that. And interestingly, the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine is one of our students, which is exciting. Okay, so Farai.
We're going to do it as a discussion.
So we thought we'd make this a bit informal. So one of the issues that has come up repeatedly at UZ, when we've hosted visiting professors from Europe or from the US, they often say to us that they find the students, mainly medical students, they find them very bright, very intelligent, but they say they don't ask questions, which they're not used to, because in their environment, actually medical students are quite competitive, so they're always trying to show off how much they know. Whereas they were saying that our students, they can see from the work they do that they're very up to date, but they wondered why they didn't ask questions. So, Farai, is that a cultural issue?
Well, it's a question that we always, it's a thing that we always discuss ourselves, also what exactly it comes from. And I think in this case, one is to be a little bit elastic with the term cultural, because it's cultural in the sense that the education system, sort of awards for recall of information. So, we are very proud of students who get 11 or 12 or 15 O levels, if that is at all possible. But, that shows that kids are, that kid's very bright, and we are kind of very proud of that. But we don't think about, encouraging the question, the culture of inquiry, of asking questions. And we tried at UZ, when I was in part of HPE, we were trying to see how we could explore that area. So the students who were coming through anesthetics, for example, we would give them all the material for the anesthetic course. We would give it to them a week before. So they would get PowerPoint lectures, all the stuff that was lectures, then they would get all the content and all the practical things. They would have YouTube video demonstrations of it. And then when they come, they still have the lectures, but this time the lectures, the intention was that it would be more around a discussion than a didactic delivery from the teacher. And I have to say that it failed, because really the students just wanted to sit there and hear the lecture and then go. And then if you ask them questions, they're keen to answer, but they're not keen to ask themselves. So it's cultural in that sense. But also, our own African culture is very hierarchical. Questions go from adults or seniors downwards, and we don't encourage questions going upwards from, so it is cultural in that sense. So I think we have to figure out, how to break that, and maybe move from, maybe not say questions, but maybe say inquiry. Encourage students to, along the path of inquiry. Yeah.
And why do you think this is important for research?
Because it's all about formulating the question. I teach postgraduate students in anesthetics, so they have to do research projects as part of their master's work. And the biggest hurdle, we spend the longest time of the project, we spend on formulating the question. And students struggle with that. And it's not just our students. I've been here in Botswana. It's the same problem in Zimbabwe. Formulating the question is the huge problem.
And I'm sure other people who've taught in Zimbabwe, like Norma and Nigel Hall, will recognize some of these issues as well. It extends beyond health professionals and goes through a lot of tertiary education. So why is it important to articulate questions? This is something that we try and feed back to the students. So I was very interested to hear what Epiphania was saying about psychology and neuroscience, that actually we try and explain to the students about neuroscience, about how knowledge is created, as a way of showing them that unless they ask questions, they don't know what they know and they don't know what they don't know. That part of the way of making the connections in the brain is through interrogating existing knowledge. So we teach them about constructionism, about how you add new knowledge by fixing it to existing knowledge, and teach them about different aspects of education theory from that, to try and encourage them to see why it's very important not only to ask their teachers questions, but also to ask each other questions. So in a tutorial situation, that they would ask each other, interrogate each other without being competitive or aggressive, but ask questions about what's come up. In particular, to establish what people don't understand. And how this develops into research is by saying, that's interesting. I wonder why that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we try, and this is what we explain to the students. This is both undergraduate and postgraduate students, because we found that with the increased intake of students, and at UZ now, the medical intake is about 200 students. And when we start out in year one teaching them, we teach 200 students in a lecture theatre, sometimes 250, with students standing at the back, etc. And so trying to use participatory methods is quite a challenge, but you can do it. And we use groups of 3, getting people to talk to each other, getting people to articulate questions to each other, using trigger photographs, things like that, particularly in preparation for community-based education when they go to the rural areas. So we explain this whole process about interrogation, interpretation. A lot of health professions education is around looking at patterns of behavior, as in psychology, patterns of group interactions in sociology, and so on. When people begin to get to know you, then they feel more confident to do that. But certainly when we suggest that students should ask questions, for example, on ward rounds, they laugh at us, because they're like, you spend your whole time on a ward round with your fingers and toes crossed, hoping that the consultant doesn't ask you a question and doesn't humiliate you. There's absolutely no way you're going to draw attention to yourself by asking a question. And that's one of the relationships that needs to change, because until students learn through role modeling, etc., how to be adults in their learning, how to interact with their seniors as peers, as colleagues, rather than as children to an adult. Until that changes, it's very difficult for people to think that they have a right to think of new ways of doing things or new ideas that they would then want to research. Do you want to add to that? Okay, so this issue about critical inquiry. In about 10 years ago, there was a landmark publication by a team of academics, people from the World Health Organization, etc., who were challenging the whole process of health professions education from the point of view of the way in which it interacts with delivery of health services. And they were saying that a major challenge is that health professionals are not taught the art of critical inquiry. And until people are, and until they start looking at population needs from that point of view, then it's going to be very difficult for us to actually get more equitable health standards globally, and certainly in less resource circumstances, which is the environment we're in Zimbabwe. So critical inquiry, it's basically the process of gathering information from multiple perspectives, but then to actually do analysis of it, interpretation and understanding, but that this should lead to new applications. So quite often when you see people presenting a research paper, and I'm sure Epiphania will be an exception to this, but people will present their research and then at the end of it they say, oh, we need to do more research. So when I review papers like that, I say, no, we can't just keep asking research questions and end up saying, well, we haven't quite answered it, so we have to do new research. What we have to look at is how do we apply what we've learned through the research? And then in the process of application, how do we then look at new questions that come up? So it's kind of like continually asking the question, but we have to then say, how does this increase our knowledge? How does this help us understand much more what we're doing?
Well, particularly in changing the world, because you don't really want to pile up information which doesn't actually get into the practice domain. So the key part of producing that knowledge is that it goes into practice, and then the questions emerge from the practice.
So when you try it, as you know, that's a basic principle of science, that you try something and then if it doesn't work, you look for why it didn't work. So we just wanted to give you the example of some of our early work that we did. So it's saying, why did something happen the way it did? And we both, when we were discussing this, we both agreed that actually our start off in research and most of the early research we did, we didn't get funded for it. And what was most important was mentorship, more than the funding, because in those days you didn't, there wasn't much opportunity to apply for grants. And in the 80s and even the early 90s, it was before the days of internet and Google. So it was hard work looking up what other people had done before. And so things were a lot more difficult, but it was really guidance from other people that helped us both develop independently. So Farah, your earliest research, what would you say a key research that you did?
Well, in the run-up, first of all, when I was doing my master's, when I was doing my MD in anesthesia, I used to have an anesthetist, Dr. Andy Fassi, who used to be sort of my supervisor. So we used to discuss a lot and so on. And I used to ask him a lot of things because I was interested in doing some research already at that point. And he used to say to me, you need to keep a notebook of all these questions because you can't do those studies while you're an MEd, but when you finish, you can chart your whatever, kind of like the research area from that. And so I had all these things which I had in mind, which I was planning to do. And then when I finished, I was kind of rattling around in the department trying to do these things. But to be honest, I didn't get any support. So the first real project that I did was actually when I was trying to supervise another student. I was now a lecturer in the department, and I was trying to supervise a student. And so we kind of went through that. So my first study was the critical incident study, which I think for me, even now, I think that was probably one of the most important things that kind of could change the way I sort of looked at research. But then the stadium stampede, there was a football stadium stampede in 2003. That was the biggest thing I had done up to that point. And really the only mentorship I got was from my colleagues in England, where I'd gone to work for 6 months. And then the maternal mortality study that we did in Botswana some years later.
Okay, well, let's move on to that. So what we did, we were asking each other, what did we feel was the most important research that we'd done? And this, in a way, this is from potential impact. And, I was involved in one of the earliest studies that looked at biological and behavioral risk factors for HIV, but that was part of a big collaborative study with Stanford University. And so in a way, this study, the cause analysis of maternal deaths in Botswana was something that we actually did on our own without any funding, basically learning from the literature how to do it. And this was, we looked at about 55 deaths which happened in Botswana. Botswana has a very small population, and this was when there was a lot of talk about Millennium Development Goals. And there was a potential of actually being able to reduce the maternal mortality rate in Botswana to the target. And so we looked at this, I think in that year, 2010, there had been about 80 deaths, and we were able to get 55 case notes to look at them to actually work out what the underlying causes were. And when we published this, it fitted with what had been done in other countries, but it really emphasized that the causative factors were not human error, they were not single causes, but they were a matching of weaknesses in the health system that led to women dying. And then from that, when we went to Zimbabwe, we went back to Zimbabwe in 2012. We were looking at how we could use the information and the lessons we'd learned. And this then led into other research. So one of the issues that I want to stress to young researchers is that as you build up through lecturer, senior lecturer, associate professor, what you should be doing is developing a body of knowledge. And so this is a body of knowledge that we've done as a team together, where we built on work that's been done by other people, but also with us on the underlying causes for maternal deaths as a flag, because where you have a high maternal mortality, it's a flag that you have other problems with quality of care. So, Farah, do you want to just briefly, we're running out of time, so just briefly mention the other studies that you developed?
Yeah, well, following on that, there were a couple of other studies that we did when we went back to Zim. One was, one of the problems with maternal mortality is that, like in Zim, most births happen outside of the central hospitals. And so strengthening the ability of the district hospitals is crucial. So we wanted to do a study to see what was the cause of failure in the district hospitals that was leading to maternal deaths. So that was a key study which we did a collaboration with the University in Norway. That was published in an anesthesia journal. And then following that, we also did this collaborative study in which Zimbabwe participated with about 25 other African countries. We had, outside of South Africa, we had the largest data set in that study. But it was very important in determining what the causes of poor surgical outcome are in Africa as a whole and in Zimbabwe for us, yeah.
Yeah, because the majority surgical procedures in Africa, outside of South Africa, actually are obstetric. They're mainly cesarean sections. And then from that study that I went on to do was about respectful maternity care. And so, as I said before, if you do research, it has to lead to action. Otherwise, it's not ethical, in my opinion. And so it needs to contribute to making the system better. So you have to give feedback to the people who, first of all, the people you researched, but then also to the community that's affected. And that's part of what we've been doing with all this work, is disseminating the findings. And then this whole issue about critical thinking, developing how to make things work better, both as individuals and as communities. So this is the next generation of researchers. These are some of the medical students that we trained who are now junior doctors. They're working, 2 of them are working at Howard Hospital as district medical officers, and 1 is working in sexual and reproductive health. You know, and we're really trying to mentor them into the work that they'll do in future. And just to remind you again, that the area that we desperately need better data on in our region is about climate change, because otherwise we won't be able to show that the impact that it's having on us. And the health outcomes as a result of climate change are enormous, and we're feeling them already. And particularly they have an impact on maternal health. So that's, you know, this is an area where it's an emergency. We need to urgently start pulling together data on what's happening.
There's very little data in our region on climate change and health. We really need to do that, to work on that. Yeah.
Okay, that's what we had to present. I don't know if people want to ask questions or if there's time for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Farai and Sunanda. Really appreciate your presentation and just sharing your journey. I'm sure it's really so important also to Epiphania and to all of us here. And Epiphania, just to say that Farai and Sunanda actually have been very modest about their achievements. They have really contributed enormously to national development, both in Zimbabwe and also in Botswana and the region across the medical sciences. So thank you both so much. I really enjoyed the presentation, critical inquiry, which I think also applies to many of us in the arts and humanities sector as well. It's not just the sciences. I enjoyed hearing about how you overcome the challenges of unfunded research, which is really, really important as well, and the importance of building a body of knowledge through your career. So we did start this session a little bit late, so time is not on our side, but perhaps we can invite just a couple of comments or questions from anyone, any of you out there in the audience, just maybe a couple of questions. If anyone has any burning comment or question you'd like to make, either to Farai and Sunanda and or to Epiphania as well. Now is the time if anyone would like to say something. We can unfortunately only take maybe a couple because time is not on our side.
I can.
Nigel, I'm seeing Nigel. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very clear presentation. Thank you, Sunanda and Farai. And I remember from the time working the School of Social Work with Sunanda, how Sunanda, I think, emphasized the importance of critical thinking and reflecting on what we were teaching the students and really helping them to think through what they were doing. And I think that is very important, the helping people to question the situations they find themselves in and question what they've been told and thinking about it for themselves. I just had a query at the end. Maybe I didn't see the slide went very quickly, but there was something about critical thinking which was cautionary, which I think you were saying, the slide was saying we have to be a bit careful about critical thinking. I wasn't quite sure what that meant, but overall, I think the whole idea of critical inquiry and also applying the knowledge that we have was emphasized by Sunanda and Farine, I think very important in almost any context we find ourselves in, but particularly in the developing world context where it's not enough just to do the research. You have to really think carefully about how that research is going to be applied. Anyway, yes.
I think what I meant is that people can sometimes look at it as being dangerous. So quite often people say that the reason why they don't want people to ask questions is because they don't want to be challenged about their norms or their values or whatever. And if you take the example of the maternal mortality survey, quite often it was showing up weaknesses in the health system that maybe the Ministry of Health didn't want to be revealed, like blood shortages or, people lacking technical skills or not having equipment. And instead of saying, okay, now that we've seen that this is a problem, how do we resolve it? Quite often people's knee-jerk reaction is to try and cover it up. You remember HIV?
Punish someone.
Yeah, you remember HIV in the early days. We were trying to campaign about it, but people were trying to shut us up. And then, also, what did you say?
Yeah, that, that bringing some things into the open becomes a reason for taking punitive action against people who interrogate the system.
Yeah.
Sure.
So sort of a blaming culture. A blaming culture is not conducive to science, to research. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We need to push forward, but I think I saw something from Jenny. Jenny, I think I saw something in the chat section. Jenny, is it something you'd like to raise here very briefly?
Yeah, it just struck me that, I used to work on tested assessment material for British schools when the national curriculum was first getting going. I didn't much like it, but I have a feeling that it's a road that it's not exclusive to Africa. The idea, multiple choice particularly bugs me because it doesn't lead to any kind of critical thinking or any kind of questioning, and it gives the impression often when there is no right or wrong answer that those right and wrong answers actually exist. And I'd just be interested to know what Farai and
Sunanda.
And Sunanda just have a quick think about that, whether they think I'm right to worry about it.
Okay, so the issue about multiple choice questions is it depends on, well, in health sciences anyway, it depends on what level you're assessing at. So at the lowest level, so like when medical students or nursing students start and you want to be sure that they've learned to a certain level of factual information. So I understand what you're saying about there not being right or wrong, but for example, you want to know that somebody knows the level of hemoglobin that somebody has anemia at, or those kind of science facts. So then those we'd use multiple choice questions. We tend not to use true or false answers anymore. We'll give people clinical scenarios and ask them to pick one answer out of 5, which is the best suited to the scenario. So, but it is sort of like 50 questions, and you're very much measuring factual information. But as people progress through their training, and this applies to a lot of science training, then you want to see that they're able to do things correctly and apply the knowledge that they've learned. So you have different types of assessment at each level, so that at the end, when you get to the 5th year, you're really examining people's ability to apply and to perform skills, to show the skills and the competencies that they've learned. But I understand what you mean, that it discourages critical thinking. So in a way, what we want people to do is to demonstrate critical thinking during their training, more in tutorial sessions, ward rounds, by the bedside, thinking about what they're doing, rather than the final assessment, the summative assessment, will be more examining that they're safe and competent to practice.
And that when they're problem solving, that they're actually demonstrating what thinking processes they're using when they do problem solving tasks.
But we've had a lot of resistance because people, teachers, trainers, educators are often in their comfort zone. And the students complain about this. They say that people come in and give the same lecture that they gave 20 years ago and have done for 20 years. And, so the whole, that's why I referred to that paper by Frank and Chen et al., that they're really saying that people have to move with the times and have to develop their own skills as educators to be able to respond to the challenges that we're faced with. We can't use methods from 20 years ago anymore.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right, we are running a little bit out of time. So I think now at this point in time, I'd like to move on to the actual presentation section, which, as Pauline had mentioned, in previous years, we had done this ACT Research Day as a face-to-face, but obviously today we're doing this online. So, Epiphania, you are the third recipient of our Great Zimbabwe Society Young Researcher Prize. As Pauline had mentioned, previous recipients were Professor Simkai Chibudu and also Dr. Rosalind Masamba. So you are the third recipient. Like them, we are recognizing not just what you've achieved.
Yes, bye-bye.
Thank you. Not just what you've achieved to date, but also what we believe is your enormous potential. We believe that you're going to really change and move your chosen field forward.
Yes, bye-bye.
So we really recognize this, and we are really delighted to celebrate with you. So on behalf of the Great Zimbabwe Society, we would like to recognize and award you the 2023 Young Researcher Prize. We celebrate with you. It is a momentous achievement. Many of your colleagues, your network are here. So we really, really celebrate with you. As we say in our culture, we say, Makorokoto, Amhlobe, well done. It's a significant achievement, and we believe you're going to achieve even more in your field. We believe you're going to be a change maker in your field. So we celebrate with you, we support you. We thank those who have been part of your journey, some of whom are online with us today. We really thank you all for mentoring her, for being with her, for joining us today. No one makes the journey alone, so we really celebrate and we thank you for that. I would also like to thank at this stage my co-founder of the Young Researcher Prize, Professor Pauline Dodgson-Castillo, who has been very, very supportive throughout in the years that we've done this, along with the Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank you very much, Pauline. I really appreciate that you joined with me in co-founding and supporting this prize. But for
You've
now,
done an enormous amount of work, Knox.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So right now, as we say, Epiphania, well done. This is your moment. This is your day. We celebrate with you. We honor you. And I would now invite you, perhaps if you have it with you, to show the audience the prize. What we've done this year is she has a certificate which we've sent to her. There is also a small honorarium which we give to Young Researcher Prize winners. So if Epiphania can show us the certificate and perhaps then say a few words in response, and then I will close the session. So Epi, over to you, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you very much to Great Zimbabwe Society for awarding me this certificate and the cash prize that I received. I really appreciate Professor Simukai and Professor Roslyn for being the torchbearers. Now it's me. I'm really excited and I'm happy. But I want to take this opportunity to actually honor my sister Phyllis, who died last week. And then dedicate the certificate and the award to her. She was really passionate about my work. And before she died, we didn't know that she would pass on. She had promised to join me online, but that was never to happen. But I'm sure wherever she is, she has joined and she's joining me in celebrating this award. I'm really grateful to everyone who has joined, and more so to British Zimbabwe Society for this special honor. It will go a long way in my future career, and it will go a long way. And as student at Great Zimbabwe University is a way to succeed, and also a researcher. Thank you very much for the honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Epiphania. So there was a little bit of echo as you were making your presentation, but I think we heard most of it. So thank you very, very much. And I think as Britain Zimbabwe Society, we also honor your sister, and in some way perhaps make the dedication not just to you, but also to your sister, who I'm sure supported you, and as you say, would have been here to celebrate with you on the day. So in that sense, we'll also dedicate the award, the prize, to your sister and to your family, and we honor her as well. And thank you for letting us know that she would have been here as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are now we are well over time, and apologies for that, but we did start a little bit late. But I think at this stage we've run through the sessions as scheduled. I would just like to say a huge thank you to you all for joining us today. It means a lot to us as Britain Zimbabwe Society. It means so much to Epiphania and to her network. I really thank Britain Zimbabwe Society, the Oxford Africa Oxford Africa Studies Center with Professor Miles Tendi, Professor Miles Lama, and Epiphania's network who are here with us today. Thank you so much for all your support for her, for all your support to us today, just in being here. And all those of you in the audience, Epiphania, just to let you know that the audience, it's not a huge audience today, but people have tuned in from across the globe. So you've already gone global in that sense. We have people who have tuned in from the US, here in the UK, Europe, and of course in Southern Africa. So you've already gone global. So a huge thank you to all of you who've made the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. Epiphania, this is your day. We celebrate with you. We anticipate that you're going to go on to achieve even greater things. I hope you will be able to broaden your networks. You've heard from Farai and Sunanda. Hopefully you'll be able to, hopefully there's some intersectionality with them and across the network. So everyone, please stay in touch. Let's keep the conversation going. Mental health there's no end to the mental health conversation. And I think one and all, we can all input in our various ways. So let's keep this conversation going. But other than that, I think it just remains for me to say thank you to all of you who've joined in. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you to Pauline and Miles, for your very warm welcome and introduction. We really appreciate it. This is we don't have this every year, but we are trying to make it fairly regular Young Researcher Prize. So we will keep everyone updated on when we next have it. But for this year, congratulations to Epiphania, and thank you to you all. And hopefully we'll see you further down the road. And thank you so much for joining us. Well done. Thank you, Tatin, as we say in our culture. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, and congratulations once more to Epiphania.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you.
Really appreciate it. And yeah, everyone, please, let's keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Knox.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Philip, as our Zoom host.
No,
Without
thank
which
you.
we couldn't have done any of this. So thank you, Philip.
Thank you.
Never forget to thank your Zoom, your tech host.
He's sometimes totally incompetent.
Thank you, everyone. I've got
Enjoy your trip to Zimbabwe, Philip.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye. Bye.